The wind that evening swept across the valley like a whisper from an ancient world, carrying with it the scent of pine, dust, and the faintest echo of distant thunder. And as young farmer Caleb Rowan pulled his cart toward the barn, he had no idea that his life, simple, honest, predictable, was about to collide with something carved out of legend itself. For just as the sun dipped behind the ridge, painting the sky in molten shades of gold and crimson, Caleb spotted a towering silhouette trudging up the dirt road, limping heavily, leaning against a spear taller than any man in town, and before he could blink, the figure stepped into the last ray of light, revealing himself to be a massive warrior draped in worn animal hide, his hair braided with crow feathers, his face marked with battle paint smudged by exhaustion, and his right leg bleeding through a roughly tied cloth. Caleb, instinctively cautious yet unable to suppress the compassion that made him who he was, approached with a steady voice, asking if the traveler needed help, and the giant warrior, his voice deep like rolling earth, introduced himself as Bronn of the Stoneback clan, saying he had ridden for days after being ambushed by raiders who stole his horse, wounded his leg, and burned the offering he was carrying back to his people. And though his people were known in whispered stories as fierce and unbreakable, Caleb sensed the quiet dignity beneath the warrior's pain. Without hesitation, he offered his own horse, Embermane, the animal he had raised since it was a trembling foal, explaining nothing but acting purely from instinct, and the giant stared at him with disbelief, then with something like reverence, accepting the reins with both hands as if receiving a sacred relic, promising that his clan never forgot kindness. With that, Bronn mounted and rode off into the rising moonlight, leaving Caleb with the strange weight of uncertainty what kind of man gives. Away the only horse he has, knowing tomorrow's work depends on it? Yet as the stars came out, Caleb felt no regret, for something inside him whispered that he had done the right thing. He slept lightly that night, listening to wolves howling in the distance, unaware that by sunrise, his barn would become something no farmer in the valley had ever imagined, and that the path he had taken, out of pure kindness, was about to pull him into a world of warriors, honor, ancient promises, and a treasure that would make kingdoms tremble. And dear viewers, as this story unfolds into the breathtaking dawn of Chapter 2, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because stories like these, full of honor, destiny, and heart, deserve to be experienced fully, and you won't want to miss what comes next as the sun rises on a miracle, forged from courage. Morning came suddenly, with the valley washed in soft amber light, birds scattering from the treetops, and the dew shimmering like diamonds across the fields. And as Caleb stepped out of his cabin, rubbing sleep from his eyes, he noticed something impossible. Giant footprints, deep as shovels, circling his barn, along with the scent of smoke and steel lingering in the air. Cautiously he approached, pushing the barn doors open, and his breath caught in his throat. For standing inside was Bronn, fully armored, fully healed, flanked by 7 other Stoneback warriors, each towering, each decorated with the symbols of ancient oaths, their expressions solemn but respectful. Embermane, freshly groomed, stood proudly beside them, draped in fine leather and silver beads. But the strangest sight of all was the enormous wooden chest Bronn was fastening shut with iron clamps, its interior overflowing with gold coins, jade stones, carved bracelets, and bars stamped with the insignia of the Stoneback clan. Wealth so vast that Caleb staggered backward in shock. Bronn stepped forward and knelt, an act unheard of from a warrior of his rank, saying that his clan had been searching for a man of true heart, a man who gave without expecting return, a man who would show kindness even to a stranger of fearsome appearance, and that Caleb's gift of his only horse proved a spirit worthy of an ancient Stoneback pact. Any act of pure generosity must be repaid 100-fold. The chest, Bronn explained, would remain in Caleb's barn not just as repayment but as a sacred trust. His land would now be watched over by the Stoneback clan, protected from raiders, thieves, corrupt sheriffs, or anyone who sought harm, and Caleb's barn would be recognized as a trusted vault, a place where the clan's traveling warriors might occasionally store offerings or treasure for safekeeping. And Caleb, overwhelmed and trembling with disbelief, tried to refuse, but Bronn placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Kindness cannot be returned with words, only with deeds," before gifting him a ceremonial blade and declaring him a friend of the Stoneback, a title sung only in legends. Soon the warriors departed, their shadows stretching across the rising sun like spirits of old, leaving Caleb in a world forever changed, standing before a barn that now held enough gold to raise towns, settle debts, or feed valleys. But what mattered more was the bond sealed that morning, a bond of honor and loyalty forged not by blood but by compassion. And as the final echo of hoofbeats faded into the trees, Caleb looked into the vast sky, realizing that a simple act of kindness had opened the door to destiny itself. Dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, if you enjoy epic tales rooted in humanity, courage, and unexpected miracles, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because your support brings more stories to life, more adventures to your screen, and more journeys into worlds where goodness still matters and where heroes rise not from power but from kindness.